St. Paul's has been blessed to be able to provide Christian education for 125 years.
Let's take a walk through history to see how education has changed and what remains the same. The students in grades 3 to 6 developed questions to guide us through our walk.
They want to know about school and what a day was like for the students in the past. The questions fit each decade, so let's see what they learned.
First, let's listen to the questions. Then we will hear the story. Be sure to use your imagination as we start our journey.
How did you get to school? What did you bring for lunch? Did World War I affect you in school?
Did you have phones? Did you have computers?
Did you have to go to school during the Great Depression? What games did you play? Was food rationed during World War II? Did you have a smart board in your classroom?
Did you have a water fountain?
How did they heat and cool the school? What was it like in your classroom? Did you get recess? Did you have to bring your lunch?
Did you have sports?
How long was your school year?
Did you have homework?
Did you have a playground? What classes did you have? Were there snow days?
Did you have a school bus?
Were your teachers strict? How did World War II affect you in school?
When our school was founded in 1899, students had to walk to school, ride a horse, or come in a buggy, pulled by a horse. In the 1920s, some families started purchasing motorized vehicles.
All of the grades were in one room and showed one teacher. When they didn't have a teacher, the pastor became a teacher. They did hear what the other classes were studying and learn from those classes.
The kids had to get up really early in order to milk the cows, feed the sheep, and bring in firewood before school.
In the 1901, the voters stated that the children should go to school as much as possible. Sometimes there was so much work on the farm that they stayed home to work.
The students started each day with Bible stories and catechism. They sang hymns, then they studied reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, spelling, and penmanship.
They had to write down everything the teacher said or wrote on the blackboard. Then they had to memorize it and recite it. Can you imagine learning today's math that way? Books were in short supply. What a way to learn.
The school year was shorter. The school started in September and ended at Easter, so that kids could work on their farms. They did get a week off in September to harvest grapes.
In 1910, the congregation added a second classroom. By the fall of 1919, both classrooms were full of students.
1918 was a difficult year. In February, the world was hit with the Spanish flu. It was an awful pandemic. People had to stay home. Many people died throughout the world. We had to wear masks and didn't like that at all. It was hard to complete our work for confirmation that year.
A telephone was installed in the parsonage in 1920. The people who did not have phones still had to come and get the pastor if they needed him. The phone lines were shared and called party lines. You probably had to wait your turn to make a call.
The congregation purchased and installed a school bell in 1923. They rang it at the start of each school day If you arrived after the bell rang, you were late.
Some students came to school by horse or they walked. However, in the 1920s, some families were able to buy motorized vehicles. The parking lot must have been an interesting place.
Team sports, including basketball, started in the 1920s. During recess, kids played games. They played hopscotch, marbles, and hide and seek. They had egg and spoon races, sack races, and three-legged races.
Southwest Michigan was not spared during the Great Depression. Many of our members struggled during this time. No one had money to spare. The farming families were thankful that they were able to grow a lot of their food they were able to share with others.
Back in 1911, Stevensville installed a water line. No more pumping water outside each day. Then in 1943, the school children finally got a drinking fountain. In 1947, the congregation installed a hot water heater in the school basement. Finally, hot water for washing hands. St. Paul's used to have their own school buses. The first bus was purchased in 1945, and the second was added in 1956.
The students put on their first program in 1946. They presented a patriotic program in March to celebrate Washington's birthday. This was the first of many school programs.
By 1950, it was necessary to add a third classroom for the school. By 1954, the congregation added a fourth classroom and a fourth teacher. Because the Christmas Eve service was so crowded in our little church, half of the school children put on one Christmas Eve service and the other half did an identical second service. The congregation began planning for a new school in 1958.
As of 1956, students no longer had to bring their lunches to school. St. Paul's added a hot lunch program. It was available all 5 days of the school week. The food was fantastic.
Construction began on a new school. The groundbreaking ceremony was held on July 10, 1960. This is a major step in committing to a future of Christian education. While the school was being built, classes for the 7th and 8th grades were held in the village hall. The kindergarten had been included in the lower grade classroom with 1st and 2nd grades. The enrollment was growing, and when we moved into the new school, they got their own teacher in their own classroom.
In 1961, a band program was started in the school. It was offered to students from 3rd through 8th grades.
The congregation began planning on building a new, larger church and began work in 1971. The new church was dedicated on October 17, 1971. It was no longer necessary to split the children's Christmas Eve service or to worship in the gym on Confirmation Sunday.
Finally, the school received 4 computers in 1990 and 1991. In 2006, a computer curriculum was added for grades 6th through 8th in 2006. Subjects included keyboarding, Word, Excel, Publisher, and PowerPoint. We began using Chromebooks in grades 3 through 8th in 2016.
Preschool continued to grow with the addition of 3 years old at the start of the 2002-2003 school year. In the fall of 2009, we began offering all-day kindergarten in addition to half-day kindergarten. We added a Young Fives program to the school for the 2014-2015 school year.
We added smartboards to all of our classrooms in 2010 and 2011.
May 7, 2013 was an exciting day for our school. Students were able to meet Gail Halverson, a World War II pilot who dropped little parachutes of candy to Berlin's children after the war. He became known as the Candy Bomber. They met him at the Southwest Michigan Regional Airport and were also able to view the AT-6 World War II train airplane.
Our students began taking place in a buddy program in September 2018. Each buddy group includes students from different grades. The purpose is to develop God-pleasing friendships between grade levels and promote school unity.
This was a tough time. The COVID-19 pandemic hit the United States in 2020, and we moved to remote learning.
It was an awful pandemic. People had to stay home. Many people died throughout the world. We had to wear masks and didn't like it at all. That sounds a lot like 1918.
We returned to school at the start of 2020 to 2021 school year.
Our students began enjoying a disc golf course at the start of the 2020-2021 school year.
Our school continues to change as our learning needs change.
Sure have been a lot of changes in the past 125 years. I can't imagine riding a horse to school in a snowstorm.
Although we have many of the same subjects, the content has changed. Arithmetic is now called math, and it is way harder compared to 1899.
We really can't imagine life back then. That one kid wanted to know if they had computers from 1899 forward. Those students were educated without the technology we have today. That must have been really, really hard.
I'm really glad we don't have to pump water, shovel coal, and haul wood.
Yes, there were a lot of changes, and school really has changed. However, some areas are still the same. The children learned about God's love and spent time in His Word every day. That was the reason for Christian education back then, and is still a reason for Christian education today.